Hello, I'm Michael Redmond, professional 9-diamond Go player. In this video, I'm going to be talking about a game I just played this week. That's November 26th, and it was in the Honinbo tournament, the elimination rounds, and for me it was the second game in this tournament. My opponent is Shibano Ryunosuke, so that's not the one who is taking titles. He's the brother of Shibano Toramaru, and his name is Ryunosuke. So that the Tora in Toramaru is a tiger, and the Ryu in Ryunosuke is a dragon. So they both have auspicious names. I have black in this game, and when my opponent played a 3-4 point here, I actually have already entered an opening that I don't play very much. I think maybe I played this a few times as I was a young pro, and after that I stopped playing it. So it's already an opening I'm not so familiar with, but I do have some general knowledge of the game, so I figured I could handle it. Also, all of the openings nowadays, they're changed with computer analysis, so it doesn't really matter that I'm not playing something that I'm familiar with, because just about everything has become new and different now. So I play an approach move. This makes sense. And as people will nowadays, my opponent answered with the knight's move. So this could have been the knight's move, it could have been a diagonal move. Something like this is the advised move. And it's just that if white plays anything else, the computer programs will be giving black a good score when black does this. So he answers, and I played again another kakari. And again, white could have played something like this. It would have been the suggested move, and I was planning to play this shimari, which it turns out this matched what Katawa was giving me after the game, so that's good. And so the computer generated variation that I saw was this one, and as far as I allowed it to go into the replays and stuff like that, I would be happy to play with this opening with black actually. So in the game, my opponent plays a kakari here, an approach move, and I press here. So at this point, I was thinking that if I could press here with sente, with the initiative, and then take the initiative to play the first follow-up move in the lower left corner, I thought I would be okay. So my main concern was what would happen if white played here, which is a pattern we see sometimes in professional play, and white's going to mirror black's moves here. But in this case, I felt happy with this because black's wall has a tendency to be more valuable than white's wall, with black having potential to surround a large area here. So there's various ways this can turn out. Maybe white's going to cover here, and if white plays this way, both of us crawl, and you can see that black's wall, while it's connected up to this moyo here, this area, white's wall is not really connected up to anything outstanding. So black's wall, and I'm talking about these stones here, black's wall on the outside seems to be more valuable than these white stones. So I think that there is an implied advantage for black in this opening. Otherwise, if we go back to this point and have white play this way, which is a way white can play to get sente, to get the initiative. White can cover here with sente, but white will have to move back to the lower right corner, and then black can play this. So again, black's wall has potential to be building in this direction, whereas white's wall, it doesn't have enough space really to be that effective in either direction. So I think I see a slight advantage for black here. So this is what I was going to do. So in the game, my opponent simply answers like this. I agonized about my next move. So I was thinking of various pincers on the left side. This is a move that I've tried recently. And in this case, I was not happy with the variation where white plays here, and whether black crawls or pushes through and cuts. This is probably just, even if white just keeps on answering that, there's various things that can happen, like maybe white's going to get a big position on the lower side while black captures these stones on the left. Whatever happens, it seems that even just using that kind of variation as a base, for instance, something like something like this is a fairly common possibility where black can actually win the race to capture, but white will be getting something extra here. Sorry, I should go back a few moves. Black's going to push through once and then here. A one move difference, but just to continue, that would be like this. If white continues filling, something like this happens. You can see black is already winning by one move. So there's no good moves left for white. So white would not fill all those liberties. There would be some bad aji associated with that, mostly with potential sorters of liberties for black on the outside. But white would probably start by playing something on the lower side. And although locally this is okay for black, the direction of play in which white is getting a good position here and nullifying the value of black's wall is probably not such a good direction of play for black. So I decided I didn't like that. And another pincer that I considered was this one, the high pincer here. This joseki has changed so much. It works fairly well. I was expecting it to work fairly well with this black stone in the background. For instance, what I'm talking about here is when white plays this way. In this case, black can just pull back. And this variation is going to work for black when black can connect up to that stone in the upper left. And so black doesn't really want to use the ladder variation because white's going to get two stones here in return. So the ladder I'm talking about is there's a threatened ladder here where black can capture these white's two stones, but white just goes for the trade. And this is probably bad for black. So I didn't want to get into that variation, but it's going to be okay for black if black just keeps on curling and white's not alive in the corner. And so I was happy with this variation. I was thinking maybe this one, and I don't know where white's going to pincer. Something like this would actually, it's probably going to be okay for black. So this is a choice that I considered. I wasn't so sure as to what was going to follow, and I decided to play something quite different. I haven't played a solid move like this for a long time. I probably played it before I became a professional Go player, so that was a long time ago. But this kind of move, although it was originally played hundreds of years ago, and people in the last century tended to disagree with it and say it was a slow move, it has been revisited by professionals after computer programs have been giving it a good score. So I decided to try it out once. I was experimenting just a little bit. And I wanted to see where my opponent would extend, which was here. That's a pincer. It's supposed to be a good move. Katawa suggested white should be a bit more tight here, in which case there would be a lot less pressure on my stone in the upper left. And I was going to press from above and play like this. So this is, again, this seems to be it's a playable variation for black. The computer generated variation that follows is really a lot of fun, in which black plays that double hane there and allows white to break through here and gets this gun. This would be a lot of fun to play. And it looks pretty good for black, actually. It looks like it's not bad, this kind of fight. I'd be happy to play this with black. Black does have a very nice territory here and a good position with this good shape on the outside. It's something I'd be willing to try playing a game out with. So let's see if I can find the game variation again. So yeah, so my opponent played a wide pincer. And this is a point where, again, I told you already I agonized about this move. Again, at this point, I considered a number of moves. I even considered pressing here, which is another move that has sort of died out. It seems to be making it too easy for white. But I was thinking of pressing one to see how white reacts, and if white plays here, there is still some room for black to jump in later. I was thinking of stuff like that. I was thinking of just invading here. And I was thinking of, it was really hard for me to judge which was the best. In my interface with AlphaGo, I have it set to show multiple candidates. And so the whole left side was lit up with a number of moves, all of those moves I was showing you. This move, again, it looks a bit old-fashioned, going in the middle like that. Let's put a stone instead. When something like this happens, it is being closer to that white group there. It's putting more pressure on white in the lower left, or even if white jumps here and black plays here, it's a tighter net about that white stone in the lower left. So it's easier to kill it, you might say. Whereas if it's further away, then there's more room for white to make trouble there with moves like this, for instance. So there's a lot of choices, and I was happy to see that the computer program, my AI, also had a lot of moves that black could play. But I chose this one, which I remembered seeing AlphaGo play, and I researched it. I found it in game 19 of the AlphaGo versus AlphaGo games. So anyone who's interested can look that up. And in that game, it turns out white played the Hane here, and for a while black just played away. So that was a really crazy game. It got very exciting. Locally, black would either play here or play here if white had played this way. White can push a few times and gets this position on the left side. I would probably be happy enough to play this. It's the kind of fight I like, but this is the suggested variation for white. In the game, white pulled back. I think this exchange, although some people would say it's giving white an advantage on the upper side, which is true, since the battle is going to be fought on the left side of the board, in this game I think it was an advantage for black to have that exchange in. So I play here, and I get this exchange in also, because now when I play this, if white tries to take the corner, then I'm just going to have, this would be a very good position with this exchange working well for black. It's sort of a vital shape point there. And so even if white curls around, I'd extend. I think this variation looks just good for black. Otherwise, if white plays the ko at this point, which is something you have to consider, black does have this ko threat. So this would be good enough for black too. Like that ko threat in the lower right was too big for white to ignore. So I'd be getting a fairly good position there on the upper side. These white stones, these three white stones look a bit, they don't look that good, do they? So I think this is looking good for black. So white has to answer like this and pull back. So with this exchange, I've established a ko. Whenever I want to play here, I will have a potential life there. If white cuts, I can make a ko. So at the very least, I can make a ko. In some cases, I might just play here to make and this is usually going to be a living shape. So I have some resilience there in the upper left, and it means that white would usually be playing a key point like this, or at least like this. That one move will not kill black outright. In fact, it's going to be very difficult for white to kill this black group outright with even something like two moves. So I feel free to play on the left side, and I still don't know which move is correct. Like this is the move I played, and other moves that I considered were this move still. So I chose this one. And if white plays here, I'm going to press. This was the suggested variation for white. I was sort of expecting white to move out. But this move did surprise me. I think white should have jumped. And I'm going to play here. And a fight like this will, this is the projected variation. It's okay for black. Black does have potential on the lower side here. So it's, if this turns into a territory, it's going to be good for black. But black does have potential to be surrounding that territory. In the game, white extended, and I jumped. So this seemed a very natural move to me because I was in a hurry to get to this point in the corner. This point in the corner is a important point that takes away white's eye space. Otherwise, I could have played this one, in which case, if this happens, I still get that point in the corner, and I do have a fairly strong attack on white, surrounding the lower side again. So in the game, I jumped here and immediately took that point. Because, for instance, if I play something like this, I'm afraid white's going to do that. And this would be one way to play it. Otherwise, if white plays here and I play here, I do need to protect against that cut on the third line. So if I do that, then white can do something like this and be alive on the side. So that corner point, this point here in the corner, is an important point. So white plays a Honinbo and jumps. And this is a very strong move here that I played. And it was correct, apparently. The computer agreed with it. But this move, it was probably better not played. And the given variation was this one where black is just smoothly surrounding the lower side. And it's going to develop into a fight in the middle of the board. And in this fight, it's relatively difficult for white to be looking to play this move, because I will be able to break through here, for instance, even like this, and cut off some white stones on the outside when white does wedge at 8. When I play this move and exchange here, I'm reinforcing the upper left, and my thought was that I'm reducing the value of this move. So although white can play there, and obviously I'm not going to play this way, which would just get cut off. And then next cut here. For the time being, it's not important, because I would just be able to, for instance, just play like this. And this would be bad for white. And you can see that this exchange has become a good move when black has given white bad shape like that. And white's just bad on the other side, on this side of the board. So I was reducing the value instead of stopping white from playing this move. So this move is going to be an issue, but my idea is that by playing this, I've reduced the value of that wedge that white has. And I played a hane. And jumping here was apparently a slack move, and this is where the winning percentage given by AlphaGo started to move seriously in my favor. Well, I probably should have played a hane here, and I'm going to extend. It's still okay for black. I think basically this game, if you ask a computer program, it's supposed to be okay for black in general, the moment black is pressed there in the lower right corner. So white jumped here, that means I got to surround white in the center. And I just cut. And white could have cut here, yes, and I'm going to extend. But actually this would have been given me a bit of trouble on the lower side first. It would have been interesting. And I might just protect the corner by capturing those cutting stones. Black can actually capture 3 white stones. But the virtue for white in this case is that white has more or less lived on the lower side. So white has erased some of black's potential on the lower side here. In the game, white just connected up here, played this move. I'm just building on the lower side, so I don't really care that white has captured the left side. And actually I can continue like this. And black is going to win this fight because black can force with this exchange and then play here. And this just kills the whole white group. So this would capture this white group and give black a winning position. So in the game, white answered here. This is a move that I did not seriously consider. It is the suggested move, and I sort of agree that maybe it was better for black. Black can cut here and then squeeze like this and get a nice position towards the center and protecting these stones. And of course I saw that I could squeeze there, but I still was attached to the idea that I could accomplish something on the left side here, so I was sort of hesitant to throw those stones away. In the game I start pushing here, and I'm just building on my moyo, and at this point I really want to play somewhere in the middle of the side. That would be this move, to establish my territory on the side there. Without this stone, it's not going to be a safe territory. I really want to play that. I also want to push once more at this point. I want to push there, but I'm not sure that it's going to be forcing it this time. So what I did was I pushed through and I cut. An asking move, asking white what he's going to do. If white takes from this side, then I get this forcing move. The difference between that and the game variation, in the corner, if we just look at territory, it's probably more than 10 points. So it's a fairly significant difference there. So when white connects here, now I get to push. This is pretty forcing. And I got to play this move. So at this point, I'm fairly comfortable with the game. And I'm still worried about white doing something here. Like there's moves like this or moves like this that I was actually thinking about and trying to make plans for what I was going to do about that. So even when you have a huge moyo like this, you do have to think about this kind of move. And I was sort of justified when I saw AlphaGo was lighting up moves like this also. So moves like this were considered by the computer program also. It's a sign that there's some aji there. There's some potential. It might not amount to too much, but because of that, my basic strategy is that I'm going to keep on adding stones to this moyo. So when you have a big moyo, it's actually a general truth that you want to continue adding stones to it. So it's like the Takemiya cosmic style, where if that moyo, if that area falls apart, then just about everything that black is invested in it is worthless. And that's the difference between these big moyos, these big areas, and more solid and small areas which will not disappear. And you're more free to choose your next moves wherever you want to play. When you have the moyo is still important to add stones to it. So I continue pushing, adding stones to my moyo. It's very important to do that. And also when I curl around here, not only am I trying to secure the line here between these two groups of stones, I also have the idea that I have potential on the left side. So just let me visit the left side here. There's this move that black is thinking of playing. And it looks like maybe I can get a race to capture with that white group on the lower side. I have a forcing move with the Honinbo connection here. And I can play here, but this is just not going to work. Like white can play here, 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 and is going to win even if white gives black a big eye. Even if we get to this position, white is still one move ahead. You can see white's winning by one move. So that didn't work. And black has more potential if black can get a hanging connection here. The problem with this is that it's not going to be forcing towards the upper side. So if white really has a choice, but if white plays this way and this way, then at some point white can curl here. You can see that black's just going to lose this race to capture. It's not working for black. So that 7, the hanging connection there, it's not forcing in this position, and I don't have anything. And so actually, this move I've just played is going to change that. And I have ideas that it can change it. And I don't really want to mess around in this area too much, because it would be bad for these stones on this side. Even if I accomplish something like something mediocre like a seki or a ko or something, if I kill these black stones in the upper left corner in the process, I won't be sure that it's good. So in a way, I'm sort of waiting for white to kill those stones, and then I'll be free to do stuff on the left side. And I'm not worried about the upper right corner either. It's just the fact that the big area here is so important, and if white gets to jump into it, it's going to be decimated so badly. It's important for me to continue surrounding this big area, and I can really afford to lose one of those two corners. So white jumps into the 3-3 point, and I attach here. I figured it was not so good covering here. I was a bit surprised to see that AlphaGo was suggesting this move. It looks a bit heavy to me. It probably doesn't make much difference. I think this move is reasonable, in which my plan is basically if white plays here, then later on I can cover there and cut at some point. And so in the game, white connected underneath. And again, I'm just concentrating on the center of the board. This is a kind of a weird looking move where it would be more natural to play here. But the center is so important in this game. And just improving the status of this area here, where there's still some opening for white to come in. Just any move towards the center, even at this late stage of the game, it's always going to be important. So white finally kills the upper left corner. So locally that's dead. So this is my chance to start this on the lower side with the hanging connection. And the difference here is that if white plays from this side, then I can cut, and suddenly with this stone here, there is a ladder. So if white extends here, I just get the ladder. I just get this ladder. So this ladder is going to work. Let's just finish that. So that's perfect. And so if I cut here, white would have to back off, and then I would just capture the one stone. This saves my group in the upper left, and white is alive on the side, but this would be, since I'm alive in the upper left, this would be good enough for me. Something like this. So white connects, and this is still going to be a white territory here, but I get to play here. Now the race to capture is an advantage for black, and there's various things that could happen. First of all, if we're looking at a pure race to capture, the best way for white to take away black's eyes is actually to go straight down here. And this is because white can play the Atari from outside, and this shape is the shortest possible shape for black, but this actually is a win for black. It's an eye with no eye for white. So black wins by one move. So that's no good. It means that white has to push through and cut here when white takes black's eyes. And this is bad for white because it extends black's liberties. And still there's the danger of it being an eye for black with no eye for white. So white has to take the eye here. And something like this will continue. You can see black is gaining from that ko on the first line. And it's going to be like this. And this is where black would probably leave it for a while. But if we continue the semi-eye, it's something like this. And there's that ko there. At the worst, it's going to be a seki for black. But if black eventually starts filling liberties, now it's that ko. And finally, if black fills here, this is a double ko. So now it's a win for black, because if white takes here, I just take here. So it's a very one-sided ko. Although there's one or two approach moves, it is a one-sided ko. And I don't even have to do it immediately, because I would probably stop playing somewhere around here. And there's no way for white could continue. Like, for instance, if I play here, white could continue with this. But this would be putting white in danger too. This would be a direct ko, in which case if black wins the ko, then already white's dead. So this would just hasten white's losing. So that would be bad for white. And the only other option left to white, so we saw that this move, which is the best as far as races to capture are played usually, it loses by one move. This one is a ko, which is a bad ko for white. So white's only choice was this move. So this is the move that was played in the game. And this is going to be a ko, like this. It's a pretty desperate ko, but white does have some local ko threats in this area and in this area. So it makes sense that white chose that. And I'm going to use these kos. This is a pretty good ko threat. If white answers by finishing the ko, I can just finish like this. This would be a win for me. Something like this would follow. This would be a win for black. So white answers that. White still has some ko threats. And again, objectively, maybe white should have finished the ko. I'm going to cut here. Stuff like this might happen. This is the variation that Katago showed me. It's a very beautiful variation where black squeezes and then finally takes this point. So this would be nice. It's another win for black. In the game, white answered. White has enough ko threats to win this ko. But these ko threats that white is playing in the center, this cut and the following ko threat will be a bit painful. So they make it easier for me to finish the center territory. And finally, it looks like I've run out of ko threats. And I played this move. So this is my final ko threat. And I was just waiting for white to play these ko threats, which are painful for white. They reinforce me in the center. So I was forcing white to play those first. And now I play this cut on the right side. And with this, I've captured 4 stones. And I added a stone there. Actually, my opponent started something on the lower side, which is actually, it's an endgame play that is worth looking at. If black answers on this side, it's dead. Black has a number of ways to kill this white group. This is dead. White just doesn't have room to live here. The interesting variation is that white can play once here, and this would be alive if black plays here. White can play here, forcing, and this becomes a forcing move, and this would just be very easily alive. So that's alive. And I would have to back off against this move. I'd have to play here. That would be pretty big. It would be more than 10 points. So I answer from this side. And now he plays here. This is the only move. It's the Tesuji. And he cuts. And if I play here, it's going to turn into... I just wanted to keep out of this complicated variation. This one actually, if we go like this, this is an example of a position where actually it's a classical life and death problem where white is not alive. I'll probably put that in my life and death playlist. Maybe I'll try to make it number 81, which should come somewhere at the end of this year, somewhere at the end of 2020. I'll try to make it number 81. I haven't even filmed that yet. So I take this. This is the simpler way to play. And the virtue of this for white is that white gets to play this endgame sequence in the lower right, in which I don't have time to push through here now, because white's going to crawl. And if I push through again, this is going to be a headache. This is I'm not so sure about this variation. It looks very dangerous for black, where white can try stuff like this. White has some forcing moves here, and maybe this Hane is going to be forcing too. It looks very complicated and difficult to kill these white stones. I definitely did not want to get into this variation when I knew that I could back off and be ahead. So pushing through here would usually be the correct endgame move, but when I play here, white can play here. And again, this is a position where when white plays here, the usual tactic would be to cut once and then throw in here. And with this exchange, I'm going to force eventually white to put a stone inside white's territory. But I simply backed off here. And now, of course, white does not need that stone in the white territory. It's a more than 1 point difference. So why didn't I play this? The problem is that white can play here and here. And again, the complications, those white stones are on the left. These 2 white stones worked really well to make it a very, very dangerous position for black. And white continued playing for a while, but at this point, the game is decisively in favor of black. And then I think I was 17 points ahead before Komi. So I think the highlight of the game was where I found this move on the left side. I had been thinking about it for a while, and I knew that the variation where I play a solid connection here was not going to be good enough. And basically that's just a loss for black, the race to capture. And that if I could force with the hanging connection, then it would be good for me. So I knew that this variation, I saw the ko, it was maybe the key point in this game. So thanks for watching this video to the end, and don't forget to give it a thumbs up if you liked it, and sign up to my channel. So thank you for watching, and see you next time.